here we walk in, and I've got a Bob's Big Boy. I got a lot of red tones. I got a lot of amber color lighting, right? And I got a little bit of neon, and it's nighttime, right? So the first thing you ask yourself is, what's the natural lighting of the environment? And then you ask yourself these couple of questions in a row. What's the color temperature of the light? What is the direction of the light? And then what is the ratio? What is the brightness of the lights one to each other, right? So we're like, okay, so on this scene, we got a lot of reds. We got a lot of reds from behind, right? So I'm going to use a special new light that I have. This was from Erick, Budapest. I was over there 2 weeks ago, and they made the mistake of showing it to me and said, this is a brand new light, and it's great. So it's like, can I borrow that? I'm going to be doing some cool stuff in LA here. So they've shipped it over. It's the version 2 of the brick lock light. This is a fascinating little critter. It uses 1x1 panels, and they clip together, right? And so I can use this as a 2-panel light. I can use it as a 3-panel wide. I can build it up 2, 3, 4 high. This is a very interesting creature. When I'm working in lighting on LED walls, I need RGB lights that are very, very high quality skin tone reflective lights. So those are few and far between. You get the LED soft panel light, and it looks like a YouTube video, and the saturation's up 100%, and it just looks like crap on people's skin. It's very electronic and very crappy. So this light has a very, very multicolored faceted diode, and it creates a full spectrum light, and it's very, very bright, and it throws very, very far. I can use this light, and I can paste that back wall and blind you all. And it's got a narrow directional beam, right? So I like directional because it doesn't spill as much as other lights. I like that I can shine it in an actor's face, and the color will read very accurately on their skin. I like that it's DMX programmable. I like that it has a long throw. Why do I want a long throw with a light? You have this inverse square law with lights. If you put a light you put somebody really close to a light, it's really bright. And then they walk 3 feet away from the light, and it drops off really quickly. So 1 foot to 3 foot, bright to slightly less bright, and then from 3 foot to 9 foot, it's more of a slow drop off. And from like 9 feet to like 20 feet, now it's the same f-stop throughout, right? So a big light farther away creates a bigger playground for your actors to move around in, right? So that's why something like this that can really throw really far is a great thing. It also happens to be a waterproof light, so if I've got any rain gags, if I need to do outside, then I can put that light and I can soak it, I can throw it underwater. It's crazy. So yeah, so that's one of the lights. The other light that I'm going to use is, this is a scene where you think about the scene itself, but don't just light the wall. Light the world that is happening outside of the wall to create a full spectrum environment, right? So we've all driven by Bob's Big Boys on Friday night when the hip cars are there, right? And all night long, it's other cars pulling by, hitting brake lights. We see traffic on Burbank Boulevard streaming by, right? So we're looking at the coffee shop, and where you're all seating would be Burbank Boulevard, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a mimic light, if we can get it plugged in. Riverside Drive, that's right, Riverside Drive. And so we're going to put some traffic going by on the mimic light. So this Erick brick lock light, it's a DMX light. So you use DMX controls to turn it on and cue it. Now in Unreal Engine, a lot of people have a hard time with DMX integration. There are people like Lux who do it incredibly well. There are other people who it's just really not designed for proper DMX integration quite yet. So a lot of people run afoul of DMX lights. So I'm having 2 effects lights to help sell the scene, right? So I'm going to use the mimic light, and the mimic light is made by KinoFlow. And now the mimic light is a light that has full color spectrum. It's a proper lighting. It looks great on skin tone. As Paul Devevic taught me, the LEDs don't reproduce red very well, and we have a very heavy red scene. Red makes people look really lobstery from the wall because the LED walls are expensive to make, so they go cheap on the way they create them. They create a really spiky little narrow band of red that looks fine to the eye, but looks terrible reflected onto skin. Okay, so we're going to use the mimic light, which behaves like an LED panel, and I just put video on it, and it behaves like a Unreal panel like you would have on your wall. And that's a huge advantage. I don't have to do any DMX cues. If I've got cars going by in my Unreal scene, they just go by. It just lives there like a wall, 20 minutes to plug in, and then we're good. So that's kind of what I'll be doing for the next 20 minutes, getting this set up and moved in. And we're going to talk about some other things in the meantime while I'm working, and then we'll do questions at the end.
Thank you, Wolfie.
Do I have a volunteer to sit in the car for the demo? Right here. You're the winner. Alex will help you get in the car. It's very low to the ground. All right, so I get to introduce some of my friends. They're already half sitting on the stage. All right. First up, Phil Geisler. Join us on the stage. Whose stuff is this on the stage? Yeah. We've got a jib cam. I don't want to fuck up my shots. All right. Next up, I have CEO of Monolith, Josh Furlow. I have Damien, CEO of Evercast. Jerome from Disney. And Erick Geisler, baby daddy from Global Objects. Thank you, gentlemen. So we want to make this very interactive. So while the crew here is still setting up and lighting the scene, you might have Wolfie interact with us, but we're going to talk about digital backlots, talk about all the things that we have going on at Global Objects and our friends here on the stage. So why don't we kick it off with Phil's down there scooting. Scoot, scoot, scoot. Phil wants to see me better. Let's kick it off with Phil. Let's talk about digital backlots. What is a digital backlot?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. Second, sorry I dressed down. I left my nice shirt in the car for round 2 of the panels today, so I apologize. Digital backlot. I think it's got a bunch of different incarnations over the years. I think in this current form, what we're talking about is a place for people to go to get fully built environments and individual assets, whether they be smart assets, and I think that's a big word that needs a lot of defining and standardizing, but effectively a marketplace for people to get ready-built environments. We talked a little bit about this in the panel earlier today. I was in with Fred, actually, of Monolith, to hopefully cut down on the burden of getting as quickly into virtual production as possible, right? And that should be the goal. It's get in, have a whole bunch of available environments that you can shoot on, you can iterate through without having to go through the rather burdensome process of creating something from scratch. I think this works really well with commercial work, agency work, products that are trying to move relatively quickly, but also for maybe the smaller independent features that don't have the timeline or the budgets to build a bunch of custom art. And so like a digital backlot in my mind is one that high quality product, both individual assets and environments, and is available to a wide spectrum of customers.
Great. So Josh, you work with many of the big studios. How is the process of building assets, or tell us about your experience in working with some of your clients for creating scenes?
Yeah, and I think it's consistent with most of us in this room. It's every client's different, every production is different, every request changes by the hour. So when we look at it from a standpoint of acquisition of the assets or creation of assets, for us it's speed, time, and efficiency. And it's hitting it in the very beginning. If we can't do the speed, time, and efficiency, a lot of times it's going to have to be a pass because it's just not going to make sense. To either acquire it under a certain budget, and not even the budget conversation, but just more the time frame. Like Phil was just saying, like a lot of the brand agency commercial work, we're talking 7-10 days. They'll make the phone call, We don't even have our boards yet. We don't even have a DP hired yet. We don't have a director yet, but we need you to fit into this budget and go. It's like, okay, great, give me the content. So if we can have that accessible backlot very quickly, already optimized and ready for the wall, it's a slam dunk for everybody.
And a lot of that comes, has to go through security. We have Jerome here from Disney. That time frame, Jerome, 7 to 10 days. I know that scares the shit out of you. So tell us how do we as producers get content cleared through a system and working with, a studio such as Disney?
So something to think about as you go through this. So there's a lot of assets out here. So we're saying, assets in different forms. It's a lot of moving parts. And if you think about the fact that what's on this wall could potentially be sensitive IP, you're looking at a lot of things moving. Now, not only is it moving to get on set, it has to move through all the different pieces of machinery and technologies as it's on set. So a traditional production, you have your DIT and you have your regular, very specific areas of data points. You get to virtual production, it's tremendously more. So our concern always when we're looking and dealing with anyone is, where is the content? Where is it moving? And is it secure? And that's a really interesting question, because most of the times we're trying to get things done. And as creatives, most people are not necessarily worrying about that. Well, we have to, because there's a lot of key parts in this. Now, if you look at this wall and we have something that's up and that's being displayed, that's, the next XYZ project with the next scene from XYZ project, none of which I'm going to name here, you have a situation where, we have to make sure that not only what you're shooting is safe, but what's on the wall is safe as well. And then let's go a little step further. We have a prop here. Where is that prop? Is that a sensitive object? Is it something sensitive as part of the scene? And so you get a lot of different pieces. And our concern in this process is, as you work through your pipelines, ask yourself that question and take a look at how we're doing it and where we're doing it. So we pay a lot of attention to that. We're spending a lot of time and energy into paying attention to that, because virtual production is increasing throughout the ecosystem, and its security is just as important as every other part of film for us.
Wolfie, checking in with you and the team. How are things going over here?
Going good. Nothing like 30 minutes.
So now I've got a key light on them. I've composed the shot, start in tight, and then do a little reveal. I've got my little effect light going. I use the mimic to get the red tones from the background. If you notice on her face, I've got the red backlighting. So as a friend of mine said, he was editing his live recording show and doing new bass lines and putting it into this live mix that he was doing. And I'm like, why are you recording bass lines for your live mix? And he looked at me and he said, it's the night they remember, not the night they heard.
All right, jumping back into the panel. So we're going to keep it very interactive and keeping your attention. So I see a lot of phones out, so that's good. Erick, why global objects? Why creating a library of digital assets?
Well, like others here have touched on, it's really important. Like, this is a very complicated process. So virtual production is production. And again, production is fast and furious. Visual effects are slow and tedious. So if you front load that slow and tedious time with assets, you take the time that you need to make a library and a catalog of assets that are very, very high quality to the level that you would need, then you shortcut the process of trying to hurry something up for a production deadline. So our goal in one of our mission statements is to create the highest fidelity assets and make them available for production so that they don't have to spend the tedious process of trying to do something that should take X amount of time and having to compress that schedule down to something that will end up with a product that is not ready for prime time.
Damien, welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
And how do you feel Evercast fits into the world of digital backlots and virtual production in general?
So what you're looking at with virtual production, there's many parts of virtual, and you're compressing space and time. So originally what you're trying to solve the problem of is I can't get the talent into this environment, so I'm going to bring the environment to the talent. But the talent encompasses your directors, your producers, your artists, your virtual team. And so conferencing, real-time collaboration becomes a critical part of it. There are also many instances now where the key talent who knows how to do virtual production can't be in 3 places at once. Well, it's already virtual. Your art department is already off set. Why can't your director? And so now you've got a director who might need to direct 3 things in a row, maybe the same day, and be monitoring 2 or 3 different productions. Well, that's part of what Evercast fits into that, trying to solve the problem and succeeding in getting a director who can basically remotely control everything that's going on in multiple environments.
All right, Jerome. A director directing remotely.
Yeah,
Detail.
you're trying to make me sweat here. So
I like to get big companies try to say things.
yeah. So it really goes back full circle. So when virtual production took off, and we said, and I've been working in virtual production space for a bit. When you look at it from a perspective of, we have visual effects and other aspects of a workflow coming together. So you have pre-prod, pre-viz, you have all these elements, and mocap, etc. All of these elements are key parts of it. What happened as we condensed time is we increased assets, and a tremendous amount of assets, with a lot of data moving in multiple places across multiple regions all over the world. And while that's exciting and phenomenal from a production perspective, it means that we have to pay attention more to where things are going and how they're going. And while virtual collaboration is key, secure virtual collaboration is even more important. When we get into things like how people are communicating with each other, that's a significant part for us, because you don't want to be on set and have information show up when it shouldn't, or the way it shouldn't. A lot of people like to use their traditional ways of communicating, i.e. cell phones and pictures and so forth, which we don't like. But we have to have ways that we agree upon on how that communications are going to be done and how they're going to collaborate across teams. So tools like Evercast, tools like that we're working with, asset libraries that are secure, which goes working on and have as part of the entire platform. Stages that we have worked with and assessed, because we go through processes to make those stages work, Monolith, Trillet, etc. And technologies that we've vetted and worked with to allow those things to operate in a secure environment. These are all part of the ecosystem that happens behind the scene, so that they can finally arrive at its final location for you to see, but keeping it safe and secure. Because if you hear about it before it happens, then it spoils the value and magic of it all. So, pun intended. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Lux and Monolith basically represent, 99% of the high-end virtual production business out there. Oh, wait, no, I won't. I'll throw in Pixo. But what are the scenes that everyone are looking for? Or what would be, scenes that are good for a library stance and not created custom? Like, what's your process shots that are, you could load in?
Street scenes, bars, restaurants, flats, apartments, like everything that you can press, rinse, and repeat. Every shot you can go through. So it's like, yes, there's going to need to be customization. Yes, there's going to be change of season. But how do you capture that ahead of time? And if we could send our capture team globally and do it all, we would. But then when we come into groups like with Eric and Jess, thinking from a security standpoint, but at the same time the quick of access or the need of access, from a production mind frame, rather than going into an archaic system, and it takes just as long to make that file performant rather than send our capture team out and do it. So.
Yeah, and I would add to that list, and I completely agree with Josh. I would add the libraries, medical facilities, hospitals, clinics, and I think that pertinent to the first question too, like a good backlot should have the ability to transcend the seasons problem, right? Like it to your point, right? It should include this, like should already be included as part of it. Like you buy the, I think it's most car commercials are made in one of 6 places, something like that, right? Like the dunes, they're made in on the Route 1 in Santa Monica, right? Like having those at 4 or 5 different seasons, I guess it's only 4 seasons, having those at 4 seasons, right? And the ability to like change between them easily and modulate those. And I think, and in a meaningful and I think transparent way. And actually, I think, Jerome, you sort of hit the nail on the head for a bunch of this, which is that in a way that we all agree on, right? Like the standardization of everything that we're talking about, I think is a huge part of this, whether it's standardized security, it's standardized movement of the assets in a also secure way, a standardized framework for making the assets mutable, right? So we can change the from winter to sun, right, or to summer, et cetera.
Great. Wolfie has a airport demo he was going to show you.
One of the use cases that we came up on recently, Brandstar has built a new LED wall in Miami, and there was a TV show that has a lot of high-end facilities. So they want to do airports. Airports are one of the worst places to film at for noise and for getting trucks onto moving airplanes, right? Perfect case for LED wall tech. So here we put together a demo for their first wall. You know, we just, in 3 days, ERG built us an outside airport, and then we did a inside airport. And we were demonstrating to their production team how quickly you can go from an exterior shot and then a 5-minute relight and then be interior. And now this is on a soundstage where the production company was looking at renting out 5 of the other stages at the Miami facility and then using the LED wall as their B set. Right? And so that's a fantastic use case of a set that they would use a lot of for their actors, but be able to just completely, you know, use it as a B set. And then another set that they would use would be like a top of a penthouse in Miami, right? So you could have the art department just bring in the fold and hold physical set, put that outside the windows, you have the LED wall, and you don't have to park at a high rise and get, you know, taco carts up 30 floors to a penthouse. In Miami, the locations are very expensive. They're paying $50,000 to be able to go to a rich person's house and film. And when you're paying 50 grand, you may as well pay 30 grand to a really high-end art team and then have the set anytime you need it and just roll over after lunch.
Phil, you had some examples as well. Kim, did you want to load those?
Yeah. So I think probably a little bit more difficult to make in a generic way, but I finished a project with actually Hijack, which was aired the other day. These are all from the TV series.
I'm really going to promote the show. I've been watching it on Apple. It's a great show.
It's a good show. Ton of volumetric clouds. So all done on Unreal and actually using a sort of custom pipeline that goes from real time to an offline process so that we can capture at a slightly higher quality. I think something like this in a backlot makes sense, right? Like HDRI, skies, and eventually, once we have a standard that works, the idea of volumetric clouds in a way that's animatable, right? And I think that is a huge challenge, but one that I know I'm excited for. And this was for us, a project that allowed us to control the entire pipeline, which was really exciting. So for me, this is like, okay, how do we get this exactly into a backlot and allow people to use that content again?
So when are you going to let me put it into the collection?
As soon as we can.
One of the things that's really interesting, well, here's the problem, because there's lots of libraries out there. There's a ton of, there's stores on the Unreal Marketplace. There's stores that have for DCC packs. The problem is that you don't know what it's a slot pull. You don't know if you're going to win the jackpot or you're going to, crap out. You don't know. And the time it takes for artists to sift through the assets and see if they're of a known quantity and quality, that's money that you're spending. So it's really important to have an asset library of a known quality. So that, like a backlot at a set, were built by the sets and props team, and they know that it's going to work in front of a camera. And applying this to a digital backlot is something that we're hoping to achieve.
And I think like a backlot understands the intent. Like, I can't tell you how many pieces I bought off Turbo Squid Pro, right? That like I spend hours retopologizing and retexturing, and like it's a nightmare, right? And like if we could buy something that has a game ready, a VR ready, a virtual production ready, whatever that becomes, right? And then of course a VFX model, right? That can be used in post. I think that'd be a really awesome thing.
One thing I wanted to point out in all of this is visualization. So a lot of the times when you're dealing with art directors and people from our team, there's a lot of R&D that goes into our project before it comes out. And really getting to be able to see what that looks like and really understanding it and expanding on that information and being able to have a backlot that you can go to and grab that information from and design that really takes a lot of time out, because they get an understanding and precision of what that shot's going to look like, or several shots, and you can do several in a day at depending on what you've done and how you've done it, and that really allows versatility and, more importantly for us, securely as well. So if you have a backlot, you have that information. We can pick out some shots, get some ideas, do some visualization, work through that process, and that's all part of a pre-production process as we go into this workflow. And this really, this backlog concept really allows that to flow the way we would like it to in a secure process.
Great. So, Josh, you like to talk about the economics of the business quite often. Do you want to talk about how much it costs to create just a world from custom, as well as, how easy it would be to just purchase an asset from a library?
Yeah, and it goes from a $30,000 asset to several $100,000. So it's just it's time, money, and people, right? So it's like if we can get it to the standpoint that going and through the theme last couple of days is the standardization, right? From a standardized format, from the quality of the format that anyone on this panel or anyone in this room can use without having the necessary need of, it's a block and tackle and that's my cloud or that's my tarmac or that's my chair. It will save us all a fortune. And not just from the dollars and cents, but just the time where we're all looking at time and attention of assets and resources and people now, of how can you do it with less people, or how can you do it with more people and then the more productions that come right behind it. So
Great. So, how's it looking, Wolfie?
Check in with Wolfie here. Kim, can you put the image back up on the screen?
So one of the things that we find people like seeing here is seeing us run afoul of our problems. So I'm going to show you the move. If our lovely young lady would be so kind as to step out of the car, and we'll have you enter on cue. Drift over here, gentlemen, for 2 seconds so she can have room. Okay, back it up. One of you get ready to operate our car headlight. Pan the car headlights off over here. So one of the things you see when you're pulling into Bob's Big Boy is car headlights swinging across, right? So we're going to start the shot on Bob's Big Boy here, okay? And then go ahead and pan over just a little bit to the right there. There you go. I'm sorry, left. Yeah, listen to what I mean, please. Okay, there we go. Okay, so then we would start on Bob's Big Boy and go ahead and everybody go on action and action. So Bob's looking good. We got some cool lighting on him, a little scary, and action on our girl. Go ahead, our lady. Nice, nice, nice. And now car light pans across and pan across, boom. Okay, cool, pan right across. I think right means this way. Okay, good. And now go ahead and pan the light again. Don't use the flag yet, I didn't call for it. I wanna show the mistake. Pan it across, car lights. Boom. Okay, so we have a car light here. We're using this brick lock to simulate a car light. Now, as you notice, as the light pans across and hits the wall, we lose our grayscale on the wall. And that's one of the big things I say about working on LED walls. It's gripping as much as it is lighting. It's shadows first, lights second, right? There's a reason you got angry grips laying around. So now let's go ahead and put a cider there. Okay, so now we side that light off of that wall. Go ahead and cover it completely. And now go ahead and pan it across her. And then boom, right. Yeah, go ahead and do the pan now. And now that okay, keep it off, yeah. Help him out, don't pan the light all the way, right? So go ahead, pan the light back. Okay, so now sweep the light across her. Okay, and headlights, yeah, and then back. And not all the way, boom, there you go. And now the blacks stay black and the background looks black, right? And so that's what we say when we're like, you gotta keep spill light off of the wall. You need to treat it like a green screen from 1985, you know? There we go.
And what's interesting is that as Wolfie's doing this, you're realizing this is cinema magic, and that's what they call movie magic. Everybody is really paying attention to what's inside of that camera frustum. That's all that matters to the cinematographer, to the actors. They're everything out. There's a whole conference happening outside of the camera frustum that no one ever gets to see. All the attention to detail is being spent in this little window that the camera looks at, and has been going on for years and years in filmmaking. So in this world, it's no different. And getting really good with lighting and understanding how the light from the wall works and how real lights affect everything is where you can start to really get the magic of sealing it all together, making it really feel like a realistic environment.
One of the other things we do for this shot too, I'll point your attention to, is the LED wall reflects into the car windshield and it reflects on the hood of the car. So anytime you have reflective surfaces, use them, right? Compose for those, because anytime we got to fool our eye, you know, and there's a million little ways we do it. And when you add 5 of the ways to fool the eye, it looks good. Go ahead and swing back to the beginning. One of the things I do with LED walls is I'm like David Copperfield. I don't want you to look at the magic trick, right? And the LED wall is the magic trick. So if you notice, when I introduce the wall to you, it's not the thing you're looking at, and it's not the thing in focus. I have a physical object up close that's properly lit that's got all of your attention. Look over here, look over here. Look at the real thing, look at the real thing, look at the real thing. Now you've already seen the thing in the background and registered it, and you haven't scrutinized it. So now do the camera move, and then have our lady step out of the car. Go ahead. Let's go ahead and have you go back to 1. And then we come off of something real, right? And then we go on to our eye. I direct you to a woman who's walking, right? So like a magician, you always know where your eye tracking is going to go when you're playing on these walls. And action, go ahead both. And then you follow her as she enters frame. And now you're looking at the car, you're looking at the motion. You're still not looking at the background wall. Now you're looking at her face, and now go ahead and do the lighting gag, move the wall, move the color. We've got some motion. And now you'd really see the wall, and you notice the coffee shop. And that's how you introduce an LED wall properly into a scene.
Thank you, Ophir.
So back to the beginning, why Bob's?
I can explain that because I live very close by to Bob's. And as a proof of concept, I walk in the morning right past Bob's to Starbucks. If you tilt the camera over, actually, you'll see the Starbucks I walked to. Pan the camera right. Pan the camera right. Yeah, keep going, keep going, keep going. And go up. Yeah, right past there. I don't think you can see it. It's actually built, though. So there's a Starbucks over there, and I walk there in the morning. And we wanted to do a proof of concept, so there's a little a scanner that I have on my camera called Polycam. And it has it uses the LiDAR sensor on your camera. So I started scanning the route just to see the resolution, test the technology. And then I started scanning more of the building. And then one day I took my drone and flew it over there and started to just gather a bunch of data. And then I put all this data together and sent it off to a level artist. And I said, look, you got a couple days. What can you come up with? And he built this whole coffee shop, Bob's Big Boy, which is actually a real place that was in the movie Heat. I think it was in Austin Powers. It's a classic place. And this is an example of a real world location. Now, I did, because I was looking, I went and searched on TurboSquid, on fab.com, on any of these other places. This doesn't exist. But from the standpoint of maybe if I was a person who shot a movie here and I had to do a pickup shot and I needed this, it would be cost prohibitive to create it. But now, if we start to think about these locations, like Josh was saying, there's only so many places they shoot car commercials. It's like the Salt Flats out in Nevada. It's like the sand dunes. That if you have all these things at your fingertips, now access becomes very easy for people. And so that's what we were thinking about. And that's why Bob's Big Boy, because it happened to be next door, and I happened to go by it a lot. And it was easy for me to take my phone out, my drone, and to start to think about what are all the different things that we have to capture to create something that's convincing. We're not done with this. This is a work in progress. This is only a few days of work inside the level. And if I were to look at it, I would go, okay, anti-aliasing thing is going on. This I got to fix, that I got to fix. But it's enough to show you that with just a couple of days and an iPhone and a little baby drone, look what you can start to do. And think about when we start to get the real gear out there with the big drones, with the LiDAR on the drones and the machine, there's different quality levels that you can start to bring data back in. And you'll get some really amazing results that'll work all the way for the highest quality of visual effects down to it'll run on your phone or in the Apple Vision or any of these other places where you're going to need to see data rapidly. So that's why Bob's.
Well, I think quick funny story about Bob's too is Erick mentioned to me that he wanted to do Bob's literally like a week and a half ago. And if you ever want to know if your phone is listening to you, I was on my phone late at night on Facebook. I went on Facebook Marketplace, and there was a Bob's Big Boy that I could purchase
An original statue from a collector in
in
Illinois.
Chicago.
Yeah.
So my brother drove to Chicago and brought Bob back for all you to take photos with today.
It was meant to be, or the machine learning overlords have been listening to us. One of the two.
But I want to bring the conversation back of, why digital backlots, why go? Eric and I got into virtual production, and we knew we didn't want to compete with, our competitors who are the giants of Monolith and Lux. So we wanted to get into the business of creating this library where everyone has all these assets that, they do them for a project, they're sitting around. And there's also IP owners, so people like who own Bob's Restaurant. Now their physical asset can have a digital monetary right? So we can partner with places to create their digital twins, to then put them into the library that they can also monetize their place. Now, Evercast,
Yeah.
how can you fit into that system? We've been working on some things.
Yeah, so
That's right.
the very cool thing and what we built recently and what we've been showing out in the lobby is, as Eric keeps saying, you actually don't want to get confused about what's going on around. You actually want to look in the camera because that's where the magic is happening and that's where it's all composed. But now that it's previs, now that it's production, not post-production, you're having a bunch of, slow VFX artists having to act in real time. All this real-time connectivity, the compression of time and space, you're never going to have all the people you need in the right place. And you want to be able to, even if the director's on set, you may have other stakeholders, you may have VFX artists, there's always going to be somebody who's missing. And the last 3 years have taught everyone to not get lazy, but to get to think outside the box. Like, hey, I'm going to pull this production together in no time at all, and I'm not going to worry about whether I can get the right people to the right places, because anybody who can't get there, we're just going to conference them in. But as you saw Wolfie saying, all he worried about is color, 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 light, 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 light. So if someone's remote and they need to make an artistic decision, a multi-$100,000 or a multi-million-dollar artistic decision remotely, you absolutely have to have the precision. You absolutely have to have on the other end, you're looking at it and you're going, yeah, I can make a color decision, I can make a lighting decision, I can make, no, I just see the reflections. And that's where Evercast has come in and we're really excited. The other thing is you're working with Unreal Engine. You're now having to put virtual cameras in virtual universes. You're putting a model together. You're putting that level. So you're really supervising 3 or 4 things at once: an imaginary universe, the real universe you've created, the talent. And if you can put all of those on one plate of glass and you can go, okay, that looks like that looks like that. You basically are at you're in a network operations center. You're in a master control center where you can make the shot, make the calls. And sometimes it's actually easier for someone directing to see it all on the grid rather than be standing there and they're kind of zoomed in. Someone or a producer, someone pulls back and goes, okay, yeah, it's all coming, it's gelling, it's all coming together.
So we've covered a lot. I want to make this more interactive. So does anyone have a question? Oh, we've got one right there.
Somebody get the gentleman a microphone.
Hey, this is really amazing stuff. I'm curious how do you get past where you can see the grid on the reflections? Is it normal to show the grid, or is the grid just for a test, or what is normally? Do you extend the background more?
Yeah, so typically the grid that's behind there wouldn't be behind there. You would just see the background, and that's what would be reflected, because we're trying to show you a picture through the camera and through the frustum of the camera. The software that would normally put the background in there isn't doing that. So in a typical scenario, when you're on a set, you wouldn't see that grid like that.
Thank you.
I know we're all a bunch of nerds here and deep questions, and I've heard the comments several times this thing that you want the real deeper questions. So to answer your question deeper on that frustum is your tool that is generated, updated quickly for the camera to see. The outer frustum isn't updated as much and is creating environmental lighting. Some tricks to using frustums for those of you in the trenches with me. You can extend your frustum to the left, or you can extend the frustum to your right. Sometimes as we move the camera, go ahead and do a quick camera move. You beat the frustum and you start seeing outside the frustum and you catch the outside wall, right?
Let me explain why that is. So the reason why is because even though the tracking is very precise, the amount of processing that it takes to get the data to the wall, there's a lag of time just because of wires and physics. So it's not exactly real time. So if you do a move that's too fast or too quick, you're going to see yourself beat where the computer thinks you should be looking, and that's why we make the frustums a little bit bigger to give ourselves a little bit of air.
There's a couple of tricks I've learned. You can make the frustum wider to the right if you're whip panning to the right, so you can buy yourself a little more lead time. The other trick you can do is if you're on a tighter shot, I'll put the A camera on a wide lens, and then I'll have the B camera inside of A camera's frustum, and I'll go as fast as I need because I'm using a different frustum. So those are two tricks for the real tips for here.
Another question in the back?
Hi, if you're going to do a 2-camera shoot and you're going to do 2 frustums, and do you have to have 2 separate lighting setups and compose them in such a way that they don't conflict with each other?
Phil?
Really good question. Phil?
I don't think so. I mean, I think just like in the real world, you might use 2 different cameras, and maybe you're getting 2 mediums, or you're getting coverage. I think it depends on what you're doing as well, right? If you're going to do opposing frustums where you're shooting over the shoulders and getting coverage with 2 different people, you may decide to key it in have 2 keys in some cases. Although it's I think a creative choice more than anything else. Things that look realistic will always hopefully be more realistic, right? And so, I think there's been a lot of studies. Actually, I saw one the other day about someone who famous cinematographer who did do 2 keys. And if you go through the whole thing, whole piece, you'll see on all the reverses, the keys are in both places. And it's a little confusing, but also like it looks a certain way, right? So there's a creative element to it. Generally, though, I think the A inside B methodology that you mentioned, right, doesn't necessarily require the double setup.
Exactly. One of the other things on the sports code, I knew I was going to have like athlete here with darker skin tone and go code, and lighter skin tone. So I had a backlight that was playing John that was more whitish and brighter, and then I had a softer fill on him. And now when I turn around here, now that harder light that was his backlight actually becomes this guy's key light, and because it's a little brighter, it's working better on the skin tone of the athlete, right? And then the key light of this guy becomes his, and he's closer to that key light, which then makes it a better edge light. So, when people say, what lens do you use? I'm like, don't ask me about my sensor and lens. Ask me who my gaffer is, right? Lighting really makes all of this.
Yeah, it's almost all lighting. And that technique is a technique you'd use whether you run a volume or not, right? Like that's a pretty standard, the offsetting the actors and cross-lighting them. I think is it's a great technique. But, yeah, that was.
I think the other problem that you would run into, pertinent to your question, is that you run into dueling frustums, where you see camera A's frustum in camera B, and that's the composition of the shot. So you have to decide on a priority, or you go into these ghost frame things where each camera is looking at something different, and everybody's going to get epilepsy. But the easiest way to solve it is just to compose it so that you compose yourself out of the situation, widen it up, or do something a little bit different, or decide which camera is more important, which camera's priority, and then you can give it a priority and say, this is our priority.
One last thing that we would do too is we would have the Technocrane with the wide lens keep the frustum on, and then the B and C cameras, as we were shooting, we would turn their frustums off because you're not moving them, you're not seeing parallax, they're super tight. So only use a frustum when you need to use a frustum.
We've got time for one more question.
We have a question in the back from Robert.
Robert?
Hello.
Hi.
So looking at rights management and compensation, how much of this is negotiated ahead of time? I'm sure Bob's would want a different payment if it's a Tarantino film versus if it's an indie locally. How do you create this sort of stock footage kind of style of thing that can be applicable to all, and who negotiates that time by time, or is it asset marketplace style? What are you thinking?
So for the way we're thinking right now is it's a per use style. So that means that if it's going to be in a feature film, obviously it's a different compensation package than if it's going to be in a student film or if somebody is using it for a commercial or a YouTube video. That because the assets are available at different resolutions and different ways, different fidelities, it's also, you're able to price it that way as well. So like a studio is going to need the highest possible quality that you can get, whereas in maybe a television something that's like made for YouTube isn't going to want something as high a fidelity. But a per use basis right now is the model that we're going for, only because we have the people who own the properties will be partnering in this, and they will benefit from having a digital version of their presence inside of this particular universe.
Like we're talking to the MLB right now to scan a lot of the parks. And that's an interesting thing. And is what we learned is the MLB actually owns the rights because there's a camera at the park. Like, the Wrigley Field is owned by the Ricketts family, but the MLB owns the rights because there's a camera. So we're broaching into fields and getting a lot of lawyers involved to figure out, like, well, who actually owns the digital rights of something when somebody owns a real property? Because we're pointing cameras at it now. And how does that work out? So, we're showcasing something that it hasn't been figured out yet. And we're kind of, I guess, pioneers in it, And Josh, do you have anything to say about that?
No, I think it's a sensible way to start it in terms of a per use, but then a lot of it will go, what I think will go into the partnership models of, it's not only the franchisees of a Bob's, and it'll get into municipalities, state governments, air rights of really who uses it. But a lot of people, and this is where Jess and I have been talking about this for a number of years, a lot of city assets or iconic landmarks will truly look at it more of a revenue driver for them and visibility, and they're going to be willing to play ball when it comes into what that per use or just a straight out buyout.
I think one thing to mention in this as well, which we appreciate just in everyone who's on this panel right now has been doing, is it's been a very secure-centric approach, which is a care for the assets, how the assets come in, where the assets move, the creatives behind the assets. There's a really huge panoramic viewpoint on the asset management and the care for what's being created on that content. And that's something we appreciate from the perspective of really looking at security first as we go through this, but also, that really translates into all the creatives across the board in terms of, where you're getting the asset from, how it was created, and all the elements go along it to all the way when it gets to the wall, all the way back to its actual feature in a film. So something really, appreciated is that everyone here on this panel has been very, security focused in how they're doing things and why. And that really just brings a large picture across the board. So just something I want to throw out there.
Thank you, Jerome. Any other questions?
A really fascinating panel, and love this idea of production-ready library, because the ill-tailored tapestry of assets out there. Oh my God, it's everyone has beads of sweat thinking about that. Erick, to your point about sort of the inspiration behind this, how you went and did your mobile LiDAR scans and the little drone, and then obviously you get more sophisticated reality captures going. But the act of going from that reality capture, that triangle suit, that point cloud, to this like beautiful unreal scene, that seems like it's still very artist laden and intensive. Are you seeing any automation happening there to go from sort of reality capture to these abstracted 3D models that you can relay?
We're thinking about it. And there are some machine learning tools that are getting better at abstracting and dimensionalizing two-dimensional images into three-dimensional images, but it's still a ways away. I mean, this is good old-fashioned blood, sweat, and tears, grinding it out. But there will be tools that will make it faster. And as you're able to give some machine learning algorithms a little bit more training set data, and to figure out how to take something that is a 2D image and with 3D data set, 3D geometry or a point cloud, and where that point cloud position is in your picture, and correlate those pieces of information. The more amounts of correlated information you can feed into machine learning, the more chances there will be of us being able to make things on a parametric level. And Phil and I have talked about this. Parametric approach is where we need to end up.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, if we don't, I feel like we've missed the boat, right? Like parametric control of the seasons, of grout, of moss growing on the assets. That should all be part of the paradigm and the standardization model and the pricing model.
Apocalyptic scenes. I like it.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, shameless. Go ahead, sir.
By the way, this particular model of Bob's was done by hand by this gentleman over in the back. Go ahead and wave. His name is Hatim. Hatim worked his fingers to the bone. I would send him scans. We would get on a meet, and he would keep iterating it. And then another gentleman named Travis helped us with the conversion from the DCC over into Unreal. So it's still being done by humans at this point.
So my question is, when you guys use the asset on the wall, is it just the Unreal stuff, or you guys use like CGI render, like 360 render?
So we do have, we are, so you saw maybe the Valinga demo earlier today. So we are experimenting with NeRFs inside of high-end 3D assets. And the great thing about that is one of the problems of NeRF right now is unless you know where the camera is, it's capturing the photography exactly where the camera is, and you can figure that out. That's where you can make some really high quality NeRFs. Where if you're in a world that's 3D to begin with, and you're making a NeRF based on a 3D render, it comes out incredibly high quality. So we're experimenting with taking these really high resolution assets that are VFX level and doing NeRF renders of that and bringing that onto the wall. And so far, it's looking really promising.
I come from a visual effects background, so.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So shameless plug for Global Objects. We are hiring and we are raising a boatload of money. So if you got some checks, I will take them. We are going to move the car out into the yard as well as Bob's. Feel free to take pictures. Oh, the car's staying here. Bob will go. Oh, so you can take pictures inside the stage. We have another demo coming up from HTC, but the band is going to go live very soon as well as drinks. So have a drink with me, come say hi, and thank you to my panel.
Thank you.